the day that I got the news that he died, I left a hole in my heart. And I realized, man, did I make a mistake, because the belt wasn't about me. The belt would have been representing him. And that's what I think a black belt is. It's about representing your roots.
Welcome. You're listening or watching to the next episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. And today we're joined by Sensei Neil Prime. Sensei, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Before we get into our chat, I want to make sure to let our listeners know about all the stuff that we do here at Whistlekick. Obviously, this podcast is but one small part of what we do. You can find everything that we do at whistlekick.com, everything from apparel like shirts or hats or hooded sweatshirts or sparring gear. Maybe you'd like to purchase a book. Maybe you'd like to purchase a training program to help you become faster or stronger or more flexible. All of that stuff you can find at whistlekick.com, and you can use the code podcast15 to save yourself 15% on most everything there. You also can go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com to find out all you can about this show directly. And at the top there, you will find a subscribe button so that you can get connected to our newsletter, which is specifically for this podcast. You can also there find all of the episodes that we've done, over 1,000 episodes, show notes on all the episodes, transcripts, photos from past guests, all of that stuff you can find there. And I also want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Kataro. For those that don't know, Kataro, K-A-T-A-A-R-O, is the world's leading, most amazing martial arts belts that you can possibly find. This month, last month and this month, March and April, they are donating 50% of the profits to International Society for Autism Research from their autism awareness belts, which I'm putting a picture right here so you can see the picture of the belt. They have this really cool belt that has for those that are familiar with autism, one of the logos is 4 puzzle pieces, different colors that are interlocked together. And they have embroidered that at the end of their belt. And they just do some amazing stuff. And all of their theme belts can be found at their website. And you can use the code WK10 to be used on all of your first-time orders, including this autism awareness belt. And as I mentioned, 50% of those profits will be donated to the International Society for Autism Awareness. They also have wholesale discounts as well, and they're all handcrafted right in the United States. So without further ado, Sensei Prime, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm excited as well. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so every comic book has an origin story, right? Every superhero on the planet has an origin story. Now, that's not to say that we're superheroes, but we are martial artists, so we're kind of halfway there already. I would love to get, what is your origin story? How did you get started in what we do today?
I was at a flea market in a local mall, and well, I'll say it. It was around 1978, and saw a poster of a Japanese man throwing a kick and advertising karate lessons. And the gentleman that I were with at the time, very close friends, were very interested. I'll be honest, I just tagged along. They wanted to go. My one friend had been in judo before, and as a result of a fairly bad accident, he had to quit for a couple of years. But we were about 14, 15 years old at the time, and this is what they wanted to do. So I thought, what the heck? What am I going to do if I'm not hanging around? So we went down the following week, and we met a man named Wallace Shintani, and I was immediately struck by his aura. And I don't know if I believe in auras or not, but there was certainly something about this gentleman that captured my attention. And he was just so soft-spoken and so confident. You know, he didn't put on a hard sell or anything like that. He just said, this is what we do. Come on out and give it a try. And a couple minutes later, the class started. And when I saw him move, you could feel the ground moving. It was just so intense coming out of this soft-spoken gentleman, and then 2 minutes later, just feeling the energy in the room just rise the more and more he continued. I honestly don't know if we were there for 5 minutes or an hour, but we were just like, yes, we're coming back. Absolutely. And there was a whole bunch of us that actually started at the beginning. I'm going to say 10, 11 of us. And I believe that I was the only one who went past yellow belt out of that whole crew. I don't know if it was just a matter of it wasn't for them. I know it's not for everybody, but I was hooked. I was hooked. You couldn't keep me away from that point.
Now, it's interesting. So late 70s, you were being 14 at the time. There weren't a lot of instructors then teaching kids. What was that like training at that time, at that age?
I had to keep up. I was, there wasn't actually a lot of kids. It was an open class. And I was certainly one of the younger ones, but already by 14, I was almost 6 feet tall, but I was probably only about 125 pounds. So clumsy as heck, had almost no coordination at all. No, I just worked it. I just worked it. I eventually grew into my body and became fairly athletic. Which was nice for doing any sport. Yeah, it was just one of those things where this was the drill and this is what we're doing. And there was a lot of bigger guys. And sure, I was intimidated when I first started, but then I realized that everybody there wanted to help you. They weren't bullying you. They weren't pushing you. They would push you, but not beyond or to a breaking point. It wasn't like that at all.
And you mentioned that it was karate, but what was it, a specific style that you were training at that point?
It's Wado. Wado-ryu is the main style where it derived from. And there's a bit of a history there. Our instructor, Mizuru Shintani, grew up in the internment camps out in British Columbia. His family was put in after the Second World War because of all the paranoia going on in the world at the time. And there was a gentleman in the camp at the same time. His name was Akira Kitagawa. And Sensei Shintani's mother didn't want him around that gentleman at all. She just felt that he was a bad influence. But of course, when he was young, that gave him all the more reason to go and seek him out. And Akira Kitagawa saw this group of young boys that were watching him and eventually called them over and started teaching them. And that was his introduction to karate. And his introduction to karate was different than most people, especially today. His introduction was life and death. That's how they survived, was by being strong mentally and physically. And after the internment camps had been broken apart and let out, a lot of the Japanese that were originally Japanese born went back to Japan. They were not going to put up with the way that they were treated. Sensei Shintani was Canadian born, and his mother felt that they were going to stay in Canada. They did move out of the BC area and come to Niagara in Ontario. And that's where he continued his training. He taught at that time a lot of judo with his karate. And when he met Hironori Otsuka a number of years later, he had already been considered a master at that time because that was around 6th Dan. And Sensei Otsuka took a liking to him. Their personalities must have just matched. They got along with their family. Their roots both had samurai roots, so that was another reason why they connected so well. And he basically, within a very, very short time, became the in charge of Wado in all of North America. and eventually branded the name Shintani Wado Kai Karate. Wado Kai being federation as opposed to Ru being a school or a style. So that is the unique, that's why we have that unique name.
Now, Shintani Sensei's introduction to martial arts, introduction to karate through the internment camp, definitely different from many others. And that training, I suspect, for him was very different. Did any of those life or death I don't say situations, but it was very different for him than it was for you, certainly when it was for I. But I have to imagine that some of those training methods or ideologies may have carried over. Is that something you saw in your training as you started out with him?
Sensei Shintani was a very unique man in the matter of he did not feel that people had to go through what he went through. And he told us the stories of things that he went through, and he never trained us like that. He didn't have us standing in front of trees punching off the bark until your knuckles were bleeding and raw. The body strengthening that they did, he just wouldn't put us through that. He said that was almost like torture, but they had the mindset that this is what they had to do. So he was all about bringing the best out of every individual, pushing their limits, but not breaking people.
And you are clearly not 14 years old now. Like, this was 1978. You have done a lot since then. Where, after you were, or not after, how long were you with that particular Wado school, and what was that transition like when you left?
I've never left. I am a part of the Shintani Wado Kai Karate Federation today. I am on the Senate of the Federation, which is the governing body. I trained with Sensei Shintani until his passing. At one point in my training, I'm going to say that was about 8 to 10 years into it, his organization had grown so much that he stopped teaching at individual schools, but had gone around the country supporting his black belts and helping them build their schools and making sure that they were on the right path as far as the teachings of Sensei Otsuka. He made a very big change on how he taught, coming from a Shorin-ryu, Okinawan Shorin-ryu base, changing to Wado. Like his original style was very strong. As opposed to, I'm not saying Wado's not strong, but it's much more fluid. It's rounded. I mean, Sensei Otsuka was probably 135, 140 pounds, very, very small man, and had to learn how to defend against much bigger people with a jiu-jitsu background. So it was all about using the other person's body against them. But he immersed himself in that, and he made a promise that when he changed and when he took on Sensei Otsuka as his instructor, that's what he would teach, and that's what he stuck to. That was his regiment.
Now, as a 14, 15-year-old high school student at that point, as you're getting into high school, we all know, everybody listening knows that keeping kids at that age involved in something is difficult. How was it for you having all of these other things pulling you in different directions, going into school and whatnot, but having the dojo there as a base to keep you pulled in? It's difficult basically for kids to stay involved in it. And how did you manage that?
I'll be honest. I mean, my parents knew that I was interested in it, but they weren't standing over me with a whip telling me that this is what I had to do. I did have breaks, a number of breaks, a couple months here, a couple months there. I don't think I ever went like more than 6 months without a break, but those breaks were based on workload, school load, transitioning from high school into the working world and that sort of thing. But once I got all that behind me and I could structure my own life, it was just it was just the thing to do. I just never left. I played ball, baseball, for a number of years. As a matter of fact, Sensei Shintani was a professional pitcher, not at the top level, but at a farm club level. And so his passion for baseball was incredible, and he would tell stories about that. And he's one of these people who actually, he was left-handed. He blew out his left shoulder and learned to pitch right-handed, and still managed to play at a very, very high level of baseball. But again, that was something on the side for him. The other passion I have as far as sports go is golf, which is completely opposite. But I think I say physically it's opposite, but the mental game is very, very much the same. The only difference with karate and golf is I swear on the golf course, but I don't swear in the dojo.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a huge aspect of mental preparation for both martial arts and golf. I don't want the listeners to think baseball doesn't have mental aspects to it as well. Obviously, it does. How did your martial training help you in your other sports? And conversely, how did working through baseball and golf help you with your martial arts?
I think when you get immersed into any sport, you learn discipline. Obviously, you're going to have body conditioning, and you're going to develop your athleticism. And of course, that's at all kinds of different levels. I've met a number of different professionals in every sport, and they're unique people. To be able to take your game to the top and be highlighted in the world is it's an amazing accomplishment that if you think about it, it's such a small percentage of people. But that doesn't mean you can't push yourself to your limits. That doesn't mean you can't have a training regimen, and that doesn't mean that you can't develop a strong mental focus. So I'm sure I'm fairly flexible, so that helped. I sticking on the golf, I remember when I was getting fitted for my very, very first set of custom made clubs, the guy said, I've never seen anybody with a backswing like yours, because the way it can twist and torque, get that twist right over, right? And I explained to him I was in martial arts, right? And he said, he says, that's certainly helping, because I mean, my swing in golf is probably over 100 miles an hour. Maybe not today, I am getting a little bit older, but on average, it was over 100 miles an hour, and that's all body torque, So, and baseball, same thing, It's although that was 100% recreational for me. I wasn't great, but I had fun, and you got to have fun when you're doing anything. So, and it's the same thing with martial arts today. I still have fun. I still love working the traditional katas that we do, and I love sparring. And, I love bringing the 19, 20-year-old kids in there and, not beating them up, but showing them that the old man can still do a couple of rounds, right? So, yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It has to be.
Now, so started as a high school student, go through, into your 20s, 30s. I'm assuming that training had to have been slightly different. What's the next part of your martial journey? I mean, I don't mean next part. I know you're still doing Wado and you're still training in the same style, but there has been a lot of time since then and now, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that happened, a lot of stories or whatever, and your training likely has changed from in your 20s to today. Can we talk a little bit about what it was like in those earlier days?
Yeah, I mean, you have to continually look for ways of stimulating yourself, okay, your mind, to keep you interested and active. But I also wanted to know if this karate stuff actually worked, obviously without going out and trying it on strangers in alleyways or anything like that. But as far as the sport goes, and in 1992, myself and four other gentlemen went down to Radford, Virginia, where they hold the karate college. which was founded by Jerry Beasley and, of course, Joe Louis, Bill Wallace, and Jeff Smith were the original instructors there. Meeting Joe Louis and Bill Wallace at that point in time certainly changed my outlook. Now, that doesn't mean I lost my karate roots. I've always known where home is, but I certainly took a different approach as far as my training goes. I trained physically harder. The strategies that I learned from Joe Louis in particular, as far as strategy goes, because I could move more like him than Bill Wallace, but nobody can move like Bill Wallace. So you do the best you can and hope, right? But it was only a couple of years later that I actually ended up finding a few people locally and training the full contact aspect of the sport. And it was, I traveled as much as I could. Anytime Mr. Lewis or Mr. Wallace were anywhere within a reasonable driving distance, I was at that seminar and I was training with them. And it was actually Joe Louis who talked me into fighting full contact, getting in the ring. He said, you have to do it at least once. I felt I was too old because at that time I was already in my 30s, early 30s, 31, somewhere around there. And he told me, didn't matter. You got to do it. He says, you've got it. You've got the talent for it. He says, you've got the mindset for it. He says, you got to do it. And when somebody like Joe Louis says that to you, you better listen, So, yes, I took that approach. I trained full contact for much longer than I competed, just because I enjoyed that level it's a rush. It's completely different. You're really, really conditioning your body and your mind. Just had a blast with it. But, keeping the mindset of one is a sport different than the traditional side. I could compete or be in the gym on a Friday night and fight full contact and go to a point tournament the next day and respect the rules of the point tournament. I never, ever got disqualified in a point tournament while I was fighting full contact. I made a mental point that I wasn't going to take it to that level. And, we fight hard in our traditional karate tournaments. It's very different than sport karate. Sport karate has its place. I'm not knocking it, but it is different. It's in our traditional karate, you're not given a point unless you can stop the person or you could injure the person. You can't get a point if you strike them as they're moving away, because that's not concussive type of blow. And you have to have all of these things in your head and still have the control. We went pretty hard on the body, but they're pretty strict about the contact to the head. Now, that's not saying you can't score to the head, but you have to respect the fact that you're only wearing like a 1 or 2 ounce glove. And that's really just only going to stop you from bleeding or cutting. Well, not if you get a hit in the nose, you're going to bleed, but it's going to stop the cutting for the most part. So it is the control that you have to have. And when I started back in the 70s, we had these little nylon pads that would cover your knuckles, and that was it. And we wore a groin cup, a mouth guard, and these little pads, and that was it. Today, it's much safer, and it should be. It absolutely should be. But you just have to know what game you're playing and respect it.
Talk a little bit about that first full contact match that you had. What was that like?
Building up to it was probably more nerve-wracking than when I actually got in the ring. I was you get into a zone. And once I was in the zone, it didn't matter. I pushed. I did not have any intentions of trying to knock the person out. My strategy was to point them to death. And that's what I did. And being a kicker, I talked to Bill Wallace, and in a kickboxing match, you need 8 kicks to before you get any point deductions per round. And my average kicks were over 20 per round. So it takes a lot more energy, obviously, to lift your leg than it does a punch. But I use my height to my advantage. I was 6'2". I was fighting around 185 pounds, so I definitely had a height advantage over most people, and I used that to my advantage. You got to realize your strengths and your weaknesses, and that was it. It just played the game. It was all about strategy at that point in time.
Yeah, and certainly at that point, and at any point, let's face it, there's Joe Louis has unfortunately passed away, but Bill Wallace is still an incredible strategician.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a word?
That works.
Yeah, sure. But obviously there's a lot of strategy, and you couldn't get much better than Joe Louis and Bill Wallace, obviously. You mentioned that you're now helping run the organization, that
yes.
You are on the committee. Is that right?
Yes. We call it the Senate, but it's basically the governing body.
Talk a little bit about how you got there. That we just talked about your full contact in the 90s. Again, we're now recording this in 2025. A lot of time has passed. What happened there in the middle? How did you get from there to here?
Being a direct student of Sensei Shintani and knowing him well, and even being friends with his son Sharman, gave me some real clear insights as to what his vision was for the future. And Sensei Shintani was really all about good people. That was the most important thing to him, was good people. So in trying to keep the that spirit preserved and those ideals preserved, it was kind of a natural progression for me. At the same time, I've always kept an international presence. I still work out with Mr. Wallace today, and I am the Canadian representative for the Superfoot system. So we're in constant contact with each other. I promote that, and how that relates to being with the organization we are now. We need diversity. We need to train the traditional system, but we need to have people's eyes open to say, I think having a base style is very, very important, but that doesn't mean that you can't supplement with other things that are going to stimulate you and or bring those influences into the organization. That's another reason why the last few years, our organization, a number of clubs in our organization have hooked up with the World Kabuto Federation, run by John Terrien and Alain Seyi, and probably the biggest name in that organization, Johnny Esterio. And maybe not a lot of people in the States would know, but Wally Slokey was probably one of the biggest international competitors from Canada at the time. He was the gentleman who came second place to Jeff Smith when the PKA first started, and they set those first champions. I mean, he's had an incredible influence on Canadian martial arts, international martial arts, I should say, really. And he actually received a black belt from Sensei Shintani, also in Nidan, in 1964. So he has, again, people look at him from a very open sport perspective, but his roots are very, very much traditional as well. And we've had great conversations about martial arts in Canada, about traditional martial arts, what it was like in the 60s versus the 70s and the 80s, because they were all very, very different eras. In the 60s, everyone was kind of in silos. In the 70s, everybody started working together. And in the 80s, everyone decided that they were better than everybody else and they could do their own thing. I think now 2025, you see more groups amalgamating with each other. There's always going to be leaders who have alpha opinions, but the ones that can work together, they're the ones that are going to benefit the most. And that's what we try to do. Those are the things that I want to keep in the Shintani Wado Kai Karate Federation, is the fact that we can work well with others and showcase our style. Sensei Shintani started a competition team a number of years ago, and he basically said, I don't care if we lose every single match. Our katas aren't as flavorful, for lack of better terms, as some of the competition katas that they're using. But he says, we're going to show them what we do. And that's it. And we still have a national team today that, we still try to instill the values of what Sensei Shintani taught.
That cross-training piece, I think, is important. And I think you mentioned that Sensei Shintani also trained judo for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having an instructor that has also cross-trained helps. How are you continuing to get that cross-training in the organization to this day? I mean, obviously, you mentioned you're still working with Bill Wallace, but
Mm-hmm.
Are you branching out into other avenues as well?
I do teach different seminars. I will teach the most traditional, and I will teach the not traditional. I will do sparring strategies. I developed a course based on a lot of my influence of Joe Louis on strategies, on how to look at your opponent and decide what their advantages are and what their disadvantages are, and how you can capitalize that. And understanding somebody's advantages is a good thing as well. I think that you have to give people options, because if you're going to limit your students to what you do only, they'll never do it as good as you. There are certainly things that they can do better than you, but if you stop them from doing that, you're putting them in a box, and you have to allow them grow. Sensei Shintani, when I first started bringing people into the organization, like Joe Louis, for example, one of the higher ranking instructors asked me outright, he says, does Mr. Shintani approve this, and does he know what you're doing? And knowing Sensei Shintani, I didn't even think about that I was doing anything wrong. But I called him and I asked. And he said, Neil, absolutely. He said, you take advantage of everything that you can and you learn. And he said, you bring back what you learn. It's as simple as that. So keeping everybody with an open mind is very, very important, because we're all different body sizes and structures, and we have different ways of thinking. It has to come out different. Even within our own organization, we promote training with as many different structures, and we have regional workouts on a regular basis. We have black belt workouts on a regular basis. Something that COVID taught us was how to use Zoom. So we continue in our organization to have high belt workouts on Zoom. We don't do it as much, but through COVID, it was a weekly basis. But we do minimum of 3 national workouts for all black belts. We have Zoom workouts for our high-ranking instructors, so that we can make sure that we're doing things the same as far as getting the root core of our style across, and working the forms and that sort of thing. But yeah, if you're going to put somebody in a box, they're going to get to the point where they say, well, can't do this anymore. Learned all I can learn, and that's it. If you allow them to think for themselves, it's like that fishing story. You give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, but you teach him how to fish, he'll eat forever, right? So it's the exact same thing. People have to be stimulated, and they have to find a way to stimulate themselves.
Yeah. Yep. And I think most of our audience will understand that and get that and agree. You also, with your involvement with the Wado Senate, what sort of things are you working towards growing and gaining within that organization?
International recognition.
Mm.
That is what I mean. I'm a technical advisor, but we have lots of instructors. We have lots of great instructors, but not everybody can um, get out and travel the way I do. I'm very, very fortunate. My wife supports me 100%. I'm off for a weekend here, weekend there, traveling around North America, and getting that presence out. I started going to these clinics like the Karate College in 1992 for personal gain. But now it is way more than that. I still get personal gain out of it, but I'm a representative of the people that teach me. I'm a representative of the Shintani Karate Federation. I'm a representative of Mr. Wallace. And, even even though I was not graded to a black belt under Mr. Lewis, which was a very, very big mistake on my part, I still represent him because he was a major, major part of my training. I trained with him a lot, and that was, and when I say that was a mistake, we had conversations about being graded, and both Mr. Lewis and Mr. Wallace didn't really start their organizations until they were very, very late in life, too late, really. And although they're going well, it would have been a very, very different picture if they would have started, in their 30s or 40s as opposed to later on in their life. And we had talked about grading in the Joe Louis Federation. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, having a black belt under you would be an immense honor. I said, but to me, it's not about the rank. It's about what can I do in between. I said, I don't know if I'm going to be training with you 3, 4, 6 times this year or once. And just because of the miles in between, he's in North Carolina. I'm in Southern Ontario, and to visit him, 14 hours. It's a long way away. So I made the mistake by just letting it go. Although he pushed me a bunch. The day that I got the news that he died, I left a hole in my heart, and I realized, man, did I make a mistake, because the belt wasn't about me. The belt would have been representing him. And that's what I think a black belt is. It's about representing your roots. Sure, it's an achievement. You're the one who's got to get there. And this is why I have a little issue, and I don't want to get into, people don't deserve ranks and stuff like that. But why do we need the ranks that we have today? If you're not truly exceptional, whether it be physically, or you're doing something for your organization, or you're not passing your style along to as many people as you can, you don't need those ranks. You don't need that recognition. Anybody who makes it up to, say, 5th degree black belt, to me, that is a pinnacle. When you're a 5th degree black belt, that means you are solid in your style. You can teach that style. You can make decisions for that style. If you're stuck in your own club and you're not absorbing everything that's out there, you don't need anything more than that. And I'm pretty strong-minded about that, right? Karate's not an individual thing. Although it's an individual who's doing it singularly, it is about the growth of the art.
Obviously, Joe Louis was clearly a huge part of your life
Yes.
in your training at that time. That's not to say that others weren't, but clearly he had a huge impact on your life. Talk a little bit more about what that was like training with him.
Oh, he's probably one of the most intense people you could ever meet. uh, uh, he was strong in the body, in the mind. He was an exceptional human being, um, and I like to think that I could soften him mentally sometimes, throw him off with a joke or a comment or something like that. Because as intense as I can be, I like to have that fun. And if he said something really serious, if you come out with something that he's not expecting, he would just glare at me for a minute and then laugh, right? So that was that was a big part. But he got me thinking. I Sensei Shintani gave me excellent basics, and the strategies that I was using prior to Joe Louis worked in a traditional manner in our tournaments, and even as far as basic self-defense techniques go. But Mr. Lewis got me thinking a lot more about different distancings, different timing. He was in the game at a level that very few people ever get to. So just having the opportunity to get inside his head, um, even if I remember picking him up at the airport and we went for a burger after. That's something that him and Mr. Wallace have in common. They both love their burgers, right? But
Yeah.
finding out about the personal Joe Louis or the personal Bill Wallace or the personal Masaru Shintani was important to me, because it's just not all about the physical. Getting into their head about what their family values are and that sort of thing, and there's a commonality for sure. There's a big respect that they have for people, and about sharing, and that's what really attracted me more than anything else. And there's a lot of great people out there that are teaching seminars and stuff, and but like I said earlier, when you see a professional athlete versus somebody who's even just very good, there's a gap. There's a gap, and I just wanted to find out what got them there. And I think, even though I may not have been able to apply it at the level that they did, I at least knew what was going on inside their head, or at least I think I do.
And what's your training like now? It's 2025. You've got this huge, vast history of training with a number of different people. You mentioned continuing to still train and work out with Bill Wallace. What's your training like today?
Well, I still train a couple of times a week in my own club. I've been running a club. I actually started it in, what was it, 1987, somewhere around there. I don't talk in years anymore. I'll give you the year and then people can do the math. But I mentioned earlier that Sensei Shintani had started teaching his organization. So when I actually opened my club, I was a brown belt. I called him, asked him permission, and he said, absolutely no problem. I did get graded the next year. But anyway, today I'm still working out a couple of times a week. Love it when I'm preparing people for ranks. Most of my black belts that help me teach are I've basically given them the go ahead. They're in charge of all of the Q belts, all the color belts. But I still work closely with the black belts, and not that I don't work with them, but it's their responsibility to get them graded. Love preparing for a grading because that keeps me sharp on all of my forms. And when we're coming up to a tournament, like next week we have a tournament, so Thursday night, we brought out the gloves and we spent extra time sparring, and I just stood in the middle and let everybody else coach the student on the outside. I just said, I'm gonna fight him. You guys tell him how to beat me. So I love working stuff like that. We have a Shintani Superfoot school, we call it. It's very unique in the fact that we train virtually. So my dojo in my garage has got the all set up, and I have a PC out there. And every Friday night, we do an hour of superfoot techniques. So we've all got our bags out there, and it's not a huge group. There's about a dozen of us. We just get online, and a couple of us rotate. I try to keep everybody adapting and understanding. Again, it's like when we're fighting Superfoot system, we're fighting in the side stance and we're working the boxing techniques, and people have really adapted to the fact that a punch with a glove is very different than a punch without a glove, right? So working the differences there. We have a number of people in the Shintani organization that are also graded under Mr. Wallace in the Superfoot system. So that's something that I'm proud to say that I kind of pushed. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I'm just saying that what I'm doing seems to be working, and people like the same thing as me, so it makes it easy. So I still do that. I do get out on Wednesday nights once in a while, not as much as I was. During COVID, I was working out with Mr. Wallace every single week online. And again, I mentioned the Zoom before. I mean, that was a lifesaver. We couldn't go anywhere. So, getting the opportunities to work out with him online was incredible. So we just kept it going. I'm looking at retiring coming up, and somebody, when I say retiring, I have a day job. Everything that I've done it's all been on the side. It's all nonprofit. And they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to do more karate. I'm not going to sit around and, nobody's going to have to dust me off. They're going to have to roll me away, right? It's just, that's what I plan on doing. A couple of years ago, I blew out my right shoulder. So I thought, well, I know I'm out for a minimum of 6 months. What can I do? So I thought, well, I've let my flexibility go a little bit. So I'm going to work on that. And I'm back and maintaining my flexibility almost to the point where I was in my early 20s. I'm a couple of inches away from doing a full side split. So, I'm working. It hurt at first, boy, let me tell you. But, I had to have a goal. I couldn't just sit around and wait for this thing to heal. So that's what I was doing. And before we had our workouts, I would go on and say, if anybody wants to come on a half an hour early online, we'll go through our stretching routine and stuff like that. So I've always had to, had to keep busy that way. So it's easy. I mean, I'm not going to stop until my body stops.
If anyone listening wants to get a hold of you, is there a way that they can reach out and connect and learn more about anything that you're doing?
Absolutely. I am on Facebook. It's the only form of social media that I use. I'm not a big social media fan, but I use it for the simple fact that I can connect with a lot of people that have the same interest as me. So under Neil Prime, look me up, or St. Catherine's Wado Kai Karate is my Facebook page for my club. And I do have WadoKaiKarate.com. Being in the computer industry way back when, before a lot of people were, I jumped on that name. So I've had that name for a long time. So yeah, there's anybody reach out for sure. I love having conversations about martial arts with other people, or I put my schedule up when we're going to seminars and stuff like that. Still go to some of the biggest ones. There's a huge one, Action Martial Arts, out in Atlantic City every January. Since we started going back when they had the first memorial after Joe Louis passed away, we went down there because we know that they were going to do some have some things set at the dinner, and I've been there virtually every year since, other than the COVID years. So yeah. Please reach out. I'd love to have a chat.
In just a second, I'm going to throw it back to you to close us out, but I want to make sure to let our audience know, again, whistlekick.com for everything that we do, Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio.com for this podcast and everything else that we do. I failed to mention at the beginning as well that you can help support the show by joining our Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. For as little as $5 a month, you can help make this podcast happen, which is, if you do the math, is like I don't know, 40, 50 cents per episode. But we would greatly appreciate that. And again, thank you to Kataro for sponsoring this episode. Their autism awareness belts are available now. Using the code WK10, you can save yourself 10% off that order. And again, 50% of the profits from that belt are being donated to the International Society for Autism Research. So, Sensei Prime, thank you so much for being here. How do you want to close this out today? What do you want to leave the audience with as we finish up?
Well, if you're going to get good at anything, regardless of your sport, obviously you have to put in the work. But just as important, if not more important, have an open mind and have fun doing it. Once the fun's gone, you're going to be looking for something else. So keep it light.